Hey everyone, I'm here barely. Hopefully, hopefully YouTube isn't already bumped me off and I've only been on here 2 seconds. Huh. Okay, it flashed on me twice. So let me know if you can see me. I know it's going to take a few seconds. I'm just typing something in chat. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. I had to type. Okay, I can see and hear you. I'm not frozen. I'm not like, okay, I was frozen for a minute there. For a couple seconds. I don't know, because sometimes when I see this thing sort of do a weird little flash out of the corner of my eye, sometimes that's a sign I've been booted, but it will still show that I'm live. And so it's very, very confusing. So thanks, Deb. Well, she's getting on top of it, putting those links in there. And yes, my nose is itchy. Sorry. Sorry, itchy nose. And of course, it itches on the inside, but you won't be watching me stick my finger up there and scratch it that way. I won't do that to you. So yeah, I decided today would be a good day for a Q&A. And so yeah, my notifications are that's just the way it is. That's why I like to come in a few minutes early, so that gives at least a little bit more time, cuz I only just now started. So, the itchy nose. I only started a few seconds ago. So, yeah, what was I going to say before I got going? But I like to give a few minutes so a few people at least can get the notification before I get into the Q&A that I'm doing today. I was doing the Q&As on Wednesdays and then doing you know, single topics, maybe one or two on Sundays, but now it's just kind of whatever comes to my mind at the time. I haven't been good at going back to the live shows and reading through the chat to see if there was any questions I missed. So with that said, if you guys have any questions that maybe I don't get to during the live, or or even questions I may have missed in comments below videos, or when you're watching the live replay, if I don't get to your questions, and it's something you really need an answer to, it's always best to email me, because you can be a lot more certain that I'm going to see your email when I won't always see your questions in chat, and I won't always see your comments. So raincountryhomestead@gmail.com. It's just all one word, raincountryhomestead@gmail.com. And yeah, that way you'll be more certain I'll see it. Like I said, I tend to repeat myself a lot. Sorry about that. But one thing I've noticed with YouTube that's really weird is that, so as a content creator, for those of you who don't have like a channel, you just have an account. When you're a content creator, people are commenting on your videos and stuff. There's a special place where you can go to in your dashboard where you can see all the comments that have come in. Doesn't matter if it's been on a short, a post, or a video. Doesn't matter if it's a video from 8 years ago. If any new comments, you see them from newest to oldest as they come in. But sometimes I've noticed what happens, because I don't reply to every single comment. And so when I reply to a comment or give it a heart, then that comment will disappear from the new comment section, unless I go to a different setting so I can see all of them, which I can easily do. Well, so I'll scroll down until I get to a comment that I didn't reply to because I didn't really know what they were asking me. And it's like, okay, I don't see anything new, and I'll just work my way down. And then maybe in a day or two, I'll get down to that one. And then sometimes I'll decide to scroll a little farther and I'll see a comment that had come in since that one, the one that I use as kind of my marker of where to stop. And I'm like, why is that down there? I never saw that comment. Or I go back to an old video because somebody commented on an old video. So I go in there to reply to it. And all of a sudden I'm seeing comments that might be months, weeks, maybe even years old that I never saw. I never replied to. I'm like, well, that's strange. And sometimes people were asking questions that were really good questions. And it's like, man, I feel bad because it's not like I was intentionally ignoring them. So that is why I always say email is the best way. If you've got questions on vinegar making or whatever it may be, or how to deal with aphids, not that I mind questions under the videos. That's great because it's a comment. It always helps. It always helps boost us in the algorithms, and I'll reply to them if I see them, if I know the answer. But like I said, sometimes people ask questions that either I don't know if it's people are doing a voice to text, and so it makes no sense. And I just don't always know what to say. Every now and then I'll say, I'm not really sure what you're asking. But then I'm always afraid it sounds rude. But sometimes I just honestly have no idea. What is this person trying to say? So I'm like, sometimes I just don't answer because I don't know what to say. I have some, I think, Judy, I think I answered that question somewhere. I think it was in a comment under my previous live show. I think I did that this morning. I found it. I found your question. So we are going to talk a little bit about that, actually. So that's one of the things. And in fact, it's time to start. It's actually, I'm 2 minutes late. So hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here for another Rain Country Homestead Q&A. That's what RCH stands for, in case people are wondering. And yes, the first couple of questions I'm going to cover are in regards to vinegar making. So it's not like I'm sure some of these I've probably covered in previous videos, but I'll never remember where. And it just seems like, it's always a good idea to touch on them again. Because hey, somebody else may have that same question and may not have seen the videos where I may or may not have answered. So the first one is a lot of people will ask me when they see me doing a vinegar making video, like the one I linked to in the description box down below, and that Deb has also shared in the chat. And that one's a couple years old now, and I don't remember what all I've covered, but I believe that is my most thorough one. But sometimes people will still ask me questions that either maybe they didn't fully understand my explanation, or maybe I just didn't think to answer. But one of the ones I get every so often is, well, how much of this or that do you put in there when it comes to not talking about the sugar. I usually give a ratio on the sugar depending on what kind of produce you're putting in there. If it's something with high sugar and you're making a half gallon, I usually do, what did I say? Low sugar. If it's a low sugar thing, I usually put about a half cup of sugar. If it's a high sugar thing, I usually put about a quarter cup of sugar. If it's somewhere in between, I might do a third cup. I've seen people go up to a whole cup in a half gallon. I've never put that much in a half gallon before, because the concern there is if you put too much sugar, you can actually prevent it from starting to ferment. So I've never actually tried it with that much sugar right off the bat with something that doesn't have sugar in it, like herbs and whatnot. But the other question I get is in regards to the produce itself. Well, I don't have a measurement because it's all going to be according to either what I'm putting in there and how much room it takes up in the jar. So, for instance, you can make a raisin vinegar. You're not going to fill your jar up halfway with raisins, because that's a lot of raisins. You only need maybe to fill the jar up about that deep of raisins, if that much, whatever that comes to, a cup of raisins. I don't make raisin vinegar much. It's a really great vinegar, but it's not free. So I prefer to use like fruit scraps and herbs that I have plenty of coming in, just like the banana mojito mint vinegar I started. And then I did start, and you'll see this if you watch my this and that on Monday on my main channel. I did start golden oregano vinegar because that's going to be a completely new one to me because I'm like, oh, I want to see how this turns out. And so when I put that golden oregano, I'm just cutting the whole stems and everything and shoving it in there. So in that case, because the golden oregano, when your herbs, if you're just shoving them in there fresh like that, they're going to actually take up quite a bit of space in the jar initially. So I just fill it up to the top. Once it starts fermenting, that stuff will kind of condense together and float to the top. So when I first started the golden oregano vinegar, it was like filling up the herb was filling up the whole jar. But now today it's only like it's at the top like this, and it looks like there's a lot of space. I could add more oregano in there if I want to, but I'm not going to. I think it's plenty. But you can do that. So that's why I don't give measurements because it's all going to vary depending on what you're putting in there. And as long as you have something in there, it's not a huge deal how much it is. You just need to adjust your sugar ratio accordingly. So if you're using a lot of raisins, my first raisin vinegar video, I wasn't using adding any sugar to it. And it turned out great, but it wasn't a highly acidic vinegar. So if you want it to be more acidic, you'd have to add at least a quarter cup of sugar to that. And I do recommend that. But if you're using it for like sauteing and flavoring and stuff, you don't have to do that because there's a lot of sugar in the raisins, even if you only just put a layer about that thick at the bottom of your jar when you make your raisin vinegar. So question, I have made lemon orange vinegar in the past from skins. Came out great. I used sliced lemons in a jar and I'm having yeast mold. Well, mold is going to happen if you're not stirring it every day. So what's happening is your stuff is floating to the top, and so whatever's getting exposed to the air is going to, the bubbles are pushing it up out of the water. So anything exposed to the air is going to mold. It's not going to hurt you. But anything that stays below that level isn't going to mold because of the sugar initially, and then along the way because it's turning to vinegar, and the vinegar is going to prevent it from molding. So stirring it every day, at least once a day, will prevent that from happening because you're stirring it back down. Some people use weights. I find weights to be absolutely pointless, and especially if you're buying those silly expensive glass ones, I waste of money. But then again, if you're needing to save your time, if you've got like 50 different vinegars going, you don't want to be stirring them every day. And you don't have to do it every day for the whole time. Just every day until things start sinking below the surface, staying below the surface of the water or of the vinegar, the whatever you're calling it, because it's not vinegar yet. So the liquid, as long as it's staying below the surface, it's not going to mold. Now, as far as the cam yeast that forms on top, I still do not have an answer. I haven't researched it deeply enough. I find I do have certain things that are more likely to develop cam yeast on them than others. Like I don't know that I've ever developed cam yeast on like my apple scrap vinegar or other such, but it's most likely to happen on my pineapple rind vinegar and the citrus peel vinegars. Not always, though. Not all the time. And you can just let the process finish and then strain the whole thing through a very fine cloth. Sometimes you can get enough of that vinegar out or yeast out of there that it doesn't alter the flavor of the vinegar. But not always. Sometimes you'll still have that weird yeasty flavor. And in that case, I just use that vinegar for something else, like add it to the chicken's water or, you can still use it. It's not going to hurt you. It's just use it to make a medicinal extract of some kind where you don't care about the flavor. The flavor's not going to matter. So it's really not something to worry about. But I find, I see you say using weights. Sometimes the weights just don't work. I tried using different forms of weights without having to pay, just ones I could come up with for free, and I found it to be pointless, so I just gave up. Stirring is better. In my personal opinion, stirring is better because you're doing two things. Not only are you just getting that all stirred up so that you're not getting mold to develop on the top. It's not going to, no weight, no amount of stirring is going to prevent cam yeast, but it will prevent mold. But what was I saying? Oh, yeah. The other thing about the stirring, though, is you're helping to aerate it. Okay. So you get more air working through there, and that's good. That's a good thing because it's that oxygen exposure and getting aerated that's going to help to turn the sugars, the sugar that you added or the sugar that's in the fruit, into alcohol, because that's the first step, and then the alcohol to acetic acid. Well, actually, no, it's not the air that turns it to alcohol. It's the sugar and the bacteria and yeast, excuse me. And then the next step is the oxygen turns the alcohol into vinegar. You can either, yeah, I've lifted, when I first got into vinegar making and I'd end up with the mold, I'd just lift that off. I just let it finish out, and I wouldn't, I didn't stir it at that point. I just let it finish out, lift the moldy piece off and throw it away before I strained it. Even if you still had mold in there when you strained it, the vinegar is going to kill the mold. So even if some of that mold still gets into the vinegar itself, it's not going to hurt anything. The vinegar will kill it. That's why you don't get any vinegar inside the vinegar, or any mold inside the vinegar, just on the top exposed areas. So anyway, okay, so what did I miss here? What did Linda say? I finally had to buy 2 new 5-gallon buckets for my utility type vinegars. The side busted out of one last year. What a waste and what a mess. I am sorry about that. So frustrating. So frustrating. And no, your vinegars will not always produce scobies. A SCOBY. So a SCOBY, there's a lot of vinegars they'll never form on. It still turns to vinegar, but I almost never get a SCOBY on my herbal vinegars, be it a floral vinegar or whatever. They tend to really prefer vinegars that are fruit based, especially apple, pear, and peach. Those SCOBYs love those fruit ones best. And like I've shared with people in the past, the biggest scobies that I've ever seen form on any of my vinegars, be it forming during the vinegar making process, but most likely after, are on my peach vinegars. And that's the ones I make with the peach skins and the pits. All the scraps get thrown in there. And I had a vinegar or a SCOBY that was that thick that formed. I have a picture of it. It might even been taller than that, but usually like that thick. Apple will get some pretty nice ones, but sometimes I might get some paper thin ones that will form on my herbal vinegars, but not always. And that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it just because you don't get a SCOBY, it doesn't mean anything. And for those of you who are new to vinegar making and have never heard of what a SCOBY is, SCOBY it's actually an acronym that stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. So that's what that means. And so it just makes this little gelatinous type mat at the top. And sometimes people who don't know about that and they start making vinegar and they see that mat form, they freak out because they just know it's something nasty growing. Well, it is kind of nasty. I don't prefer the taste of it. And if you're not used to something like that, it can seem really gross. This weird gelatinous mat at the top. But I always feed mine to my chickens. My chickens love it, and it's so healthy for them. You can eat it. Some people will dehydrate it and then use it as a seasoning, powder it up, use it as seasoning. I tried dehydrating a little bit one time just to see what it tastes like. It's like, ew. I didn't personally like it. Yeah. Symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. So it's not, people assume it's a word. And so when they say a plural for SCOBY, they want to change the Y to IES, which wouldn't actually be correct. way to do it since it's an acronym. That's why you always see me capitalize every letter. I'm not yelling at people, I'm capitalizing every letter to show it's an acronym. So my apple vinegar tastes great. It just did not produce one. Yeah, it's as long as it tastes great and it's vinegar, it's fine. Yeah. I'm typically your fruit ones will get one, but not. I've had some that didn't. I don't think I've ever had a peach vinegar not get one, but I think I've had apple vinegars not form one. A lot of times they'll form them in storage, not while they're in vinegar making process, but once you have it stored and you put it away for a while, you might pull it out and find some scobies in there. Might be a few of them growing in there. So then the other question that I got in regards to vinegar making was somebody was asking, how do I make vinegar from wine? Well, that's super easy because step one is already done, or the first couple steps, because you got the wine, because really that 2-week mark ish, remember it's kind of a living thing. It's a culture. So these are just estimates, just like, a woman is typically pregnant for 40 weeks, 9 months. It's an estimate. Sometimes it can be 38 weeks. Sometimes it can be 42. Sometimes it's 36. So at any rate, an estimate at about 2 weeks, most of the sugars in your vinegar will have turned to alcohol. So it will have a very strong flavor and aroma of wine at that point. So then step 2 is where it then converts into vinegar. So if you've got wine, I personally have never done it. I wouldn't want to waste any of my good homemade wine doing this. But all you have to do is put the wine into, you can keep it in the bottle, but it's going to take longer if you do it that way. It's just a matter of giving it oxygen exposure for a couple of weeks. So simply, I would put it in like a gallon, half-gallon jar, whatever size, however much wine it is, put a cloth over it just like you would the vinegar. No stirring needed, nothing. Just cover it, leave it for about 2 weeks. Maybe even only a week. It just depends. And it should become vinegar. So I don't know if any of you have ever you had, like one night, maybe you had a glass of wine, but you didn't finish it and it was sitting out. You left it out all night and you go and taste it the next morning and it tastes kind of sour, like it's kind of vinegary. That's why, because it sat out exposed to the oxygen all night. Do you test the pH in your vinegar? I have. But I rarely do it. But you can get universal pH strips. And what I recommend is you pour, and this is good for people that are just getting started into vinegar making. And they want to have an idea. You pour just a little bit of that vinegar when you believe it is done into a tiny container, just a tiny bit, because you're going to throw that out. All you need is enough to take that strip and dip it in there, swirl it for a couple of seconds, pull it out, and then read it and compare it to the chart that's on the box or the bottle. And you'll get a rough idea. So you're looking for, I just round it to a 3.0 pH, and that's going to equal about a 5% acidity. So the only time I ever do that is sometimes I have vinegars that when they're done, they have a strong vinegar taste, but they seem to have a sweetness to them that I'm like, makes me think it's not done. Like it still has sugar in it. But I'm like, it's been over 30 days and it sure tastes like vinegar, but that sweetness I'm not sure about. So if I want to make sure I have a fully finished vinegar, sometimes I don't care. It depends on how I plan on using it. Then I will use a test strip. Samantha, I'm not sure about that one, if they expire. It should say on the container. I've never noticed. I've had the same pH strips for years. But the thing is, I think people concern themselves a little too much about the accuracy. I don't think you have to be that worried about it. I mean, if you've ever tasted vinegar, Like store-bought vinegar, you know what it tastes like, you know what it smells like. Consider that, and then when you taste and smell your homemade vinegar, if it tastes and smells as acidic and strong as a store-bought, you know you gotta have a pretty decent vinegar. Like, I recently pulled out one of my apple scrap vinegars, and it was definitely tasted just like the apple cider vinegar you buy in the store. I've had some that weren't quite as strong. Maybe they had a lower sugar content initially. The SCOBY and the mother are the same thing, in my personal opinion. Now, some people refer to the mother as the sedimenty stuff at the bottom, which is what I used to think, and it can be, but some people call the SCOBY the mother. But some people call the mother the SCOBY that forms on vinegar, and a SCOBY is what forms on kombucha. Well, they're the same thing, because kombucha, when it's allowed to do its full process, it's basically just black tea vinegar or green tea vinegar or whatever you make your kombucha out of, which I don't do. I did it many years ago, and it's just not my thing. I'm just not a I did, and I stuck with it for a while, and then I'm like, "You know what? I'm just really not crazy about this stuff." Because when we took it for health reasons, it was a vinegar. It was very sour. There was no sweetness to it. It was just a black tea vinegar. That's all it was. And then, some years ago, it suddenly just exploded and got popular. And now everybody's adding fruit flavors and stuff to it. And that's fine. It's still not my thing. It could be because I've never been a lover of black teas or any kind of true tea. Not white, not green, not black, not oolong, none of those. They all come from the same plant, by the way, if you didn't know that. It's just how they're processed that gives them the different flavor. So they all come from the Camellia sinensis, but you can also use your Camellia or Camellia for those people who get a little bent out of shape with the way I pronounce it, japonica, because they're virtually the same thing. So, but yeah, I prefer my own homemade probiotic drinks when I want them, or just some simple cold infusions or hot infusions made with whatever herbs are coming in fresh or I have put up dried. Which, by the way, in my dehydrator today, just running one today. Well, you might have seen my photo, but I've got honeysuckle flowers, thyme, rosemary, and it smells wonderful in this room. It smells so good in here. You'd think those well, the weird thing though is I also have feverfew, which kind of has that same sort of fragrance as the taste, which isn't super great. But for some reason altogether, these smell really good. They have just this wonderful, clean smell to them. And then some more dandelion leaves. I got to finish topping off my jar. I realized this morning, I'm like, oh, I never did finish topping off this jar of dandelion leaves. I better get some more in there. So, okay. Oh, and then the question that let me see. Did I cover that question? The I think it was Judy's question. Pear cider. I was trying to remember what it was. Hopefully you're still here, Judy. But I did answer it in that comment. If you want to go back and look, but I'll try to answer it now. 3 weeks old. I'd like to use the last quart to make some vinegar with it. Pear cider. Is this possible? So, yes. Now, Judy, if you're still here, here's the problem with you can turn any juice into a vinegar, but here's the problem that you might have is if the juice, any kind of heated method was used to make that juice, like I think you'd mentioned I think that was you, Judy, that had mentioned using your crock pot or something, or you steamed it or you cooked it down in any way, then the chances are you're going to need to add a starter to it because you've probably killed off all the bacteria and yeast that it would be present that would then get that vinegar going without the need for a starter. So, yeah, you can take any kind of juice. Like I have some canned grape juice from several years ago that I don't know that I'm ever going to use because it's super, super sour. I could turn that to a vinegar. I should probably try it just to see, just to prove it can be done. By I've just been using it for when I think of it. But I have so many grapes always coming in. I have tons still in the freezer from 2 years ago. Um, and I just use those to make wine. But when I think of it, I try to go back and grab one of those quart jars so I can get those used up. But maybe I should try making vinegar out of a couple of them. And in that case, I would add a starter to it because that was not only canned, I had at that time to make the juice, I had cooked it to, instead of using it, doing it in a raw form. So if it was raw juice, you wouldn't need to do that. But if it's been cooked in any way, you would need to add a starter. So you can always look up my fermentation starter videos because it's really easy to make your own. It's just a liquid starter. You can make it out of any herb, just like the vinegar. You can make it out of any herb or fruit, fresh or dried, or even vegetable. And so I've made starters just like vinegar. I've made starters out of many different things. I've made them out of strawberries and peaches, and you just don't need as much because you just need to make a little jar. You got your sugar, your water, and whatever fruit. I've used dandelions. I've used red clovers. Goodness, the list is long. Kumquats, citrus peels, just anything, any kind of vegetation to throw in there that's going to be either fresh or dried that's still going to have those, the bacteria and yeast present on it. Because even dehydrated, as long as it wasn't dehydrated at a super high temperature, it's still going to work. If it's been cooked, though, that's different. Have you grown, used, and or dehydrated rue? I don't know what that is. If it's a plant, I don't know what it is. I know what rue is as far as making like a base to a gravy or a sauce. Okay. Anyway, moving on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about making starts from your mints. I think I did this in another live, but I wanted to make sure this is something that got into a standalone video. So it's so easy to do. In fact, I have a video on it that I linked to in the description box that I did several years ago, quite a few years ago. Well, I don't even know what year that was, 2018 maybe. But it's just a matter of digging. You just go to the outside edges of your mint. So this could be catnip, cat mint, mojito mint, peppermint, oregano. You could even do this with lemon balm. These are all mints, but some of them might not work as well, like a rosemary. Thyme should work, but I just go to the outer edges of the plant and then kind of dig under there and try to pull up a chunk of that plant with that's still going to have some of that root attached to it. And, just being careful not to break that whole bottom chunk off. But a lot of times what you'll find with mints is any part that gets buried in the ground, that's going to also form roots. A lot of them will do that. And then you just put it in a pot or put it in another spot where you want it to grow and water it in well. Super easy to do. So I had to do this with my oregano because I realized I was losing my oregano in the West Herb Garden here. I'm not sure why I was losing it. I could only think it was maybe the wood ash that we were dumping in there. Might have been too much for it. So I did find some pieces of the vinegar of the oregano that were still alive. And I kind of dug down and pulled that up so I could get that piece that was still alive by the roots and transplant it into a pot on my deck. I did this last year when I realized this was happening, so I could make sure I had some going again. I didn't want to just leave what was there because it might continue dying. Now, thankfully, there is some coming back from over there, but it still is taking a while. The stuff that I put in the pot last year, it's doing great. So I'm really glad that I did that. And then I found another where I forgot that I had some oregano growing, but it never really was doing great because it was getting too much shade from the currants and the elderberries. So I realized, oh, this is still back here. So I dug that whole chunk up and moved it forward more in the same area where it could get more sun because it does like having sun. So then another question I got was in how to deal with aphids. We actually haven't had a big problem with aphids in quite some time. Now, mostly when we have aphids, the place that, and oh, by the way, hi Billy. The apple tree, our old apple tree was the one that would get hit the hardest with aphids. And so it was like every year, just aphids all over the place. And there was a few different things that we did. Uh, One is planting like peppermint or any other type of strong mint. You could probably, I would say oregano would work. I actually have golden oregano growing around the base of my one apple tree. My peppermints all died from the base of this apple tree over here, but but I did do that. So growing certain types of mints at the base, lemon balm should be another good one. Anything that ants do not like, any kind of plant an ant wouldn't like. Grow it at the base of your trees if it's a fruit tree. And that will help keep the ants off your tree because it's the ants that are taking those aphids up there, right? So the ants carry the aphids up there and they, basically place them around there, and then the ants will go up and milk the aphids. So that's how that works. And then one year though, I think before the peppermint really started growing, what I did even before that was because we were trying a few different things. Like I think we made the whole borax. You mix borax with sugar, and the sugar will attract the ants, and then they'll take the borax, and the borax will kill them. Because if you don't have the ants bringing the aphids in, you know, it's getting rid of the ants is half the problem. But to get rid of the aphids directly, you can also, one year I'm like, that's it, because I was starting to get aphids on other plants in my backyard garden. So I bought, it sounds so silly, I didn't even know you could do this, and I'm sure a lot of you have already heard of it, but I bought some ladybugs and set them free in my garden areas because especially in the areas where the aphids were, where there were a lot of them, like on that apple tree. And ladybugs, I can't even remember. I should have looked it up again before I got on here. How they can eat a ton of, and obviously I'm using hyperbole. They eat a lot of aphids, a lot. They just like, "Arr, arr, 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 arr." They'll munch down on those aphids. And ever since I did those two things with the mints and the ladybugs, I think I bought them again another year. But I haven't, it's been years since I've done it. And I haven't had any issues with aphids since. So ladybugs are a really great way to deal with aphids because they just chow down on those aphids. So the ladybug is definitely a friend to the garden in that way. I had chocolate mint taking over a raised bed and kept pulling it and throwing it up against the house. Oh yeah, I remember sharing this, and it's growing all down the side of my house. It wasn't planted at all. Yeah, that's the thing with mints like that is they're so easy to make more plants out of. See, I just planted mint into a cord pineapple as an experiment. Ooh, that sounds interesting. Using the cord pineapple as because you get your fertilizer and you got your, a pot. I noticed when I moved here, I had a lot of ladybugs. I noticed a few months later when I planted, why? Aphids. Yeah, they love them aphids. So if I ever start getting another infestation of aphids, I'll be looking for getting more ladybugs. Now, I bought mine, I think I ordered them from Amazon. I'm pretty sure. But your local nursery may also carry them or might be able to order them up for you. I'm not sure where else you can look. But I know you can get them on Amazon still to this day. I looked in my order history to see if I could find the place I ordered from, but I couldn't find it in there. But I saw that there were still, just doing a general search, you can find, you know, just a little container of live ladybugs. And I think all of them were alive when I got them. Maybe there were a couple of dead ones in there, but they traveled quite well. Let's see. Okay. Let's see what other questions. Um, some of you might have seen the picture of my coffee plant. Now, I had heard that a coffee plant takes 2 years to get its little cherry. They're actually called coffee cherries. I called them berries, I think, in the post. You know, the cherries, berries, whatever. I think they're referred to as cherries because they're bright red. And, but I'm thinking here, like my friend that gave me the little start that she had made, she's had hers for several years. It took her several years before she started getting the cherries off of hers. And then it can take a while before you're getting enough to do much with. So each cherry holds 2 coffee beans. And it can take, from what she said, it can take 15 coffee beans to make a cup of coffee. So I was thinking, since my plant is over a year old and I had heard that they can start getting their fruit at the 2-year mark, I'm thinking, oh, I might be able to get fruit next year. But then after she said that, I'm like, oh, it might take a few more years after that before I see any fruit on it. And I'm wondering if that's because it's not growing in its natural environment. Because here you'd have to grow it inside. So you grow it as a potted plant in our area, and it does make a beautiful plant. I know that picture, it's still very young, but if you saw my friend's plant, it's like a tree. It's really beautiful. It makes a beautiful house plant. And I remember, being there, her showing me her little coffee cherries on there. And what I'm excited about trying though too is the fruit. A lot of people just discard the fruit. They're just going right for the beans, but the fruit is edible and I guess it tastes pretty good. It's got a nice, it's sweet. So I'd try it. I'd eat it. So yeah, just a little tidbit there. So you can there's a lot of things we can't grow here even inside the house. But like we've got a grapefruit tree growing out there. It's third one that we've tried growing from seed that we got from a grapefruit. The first 2 we had planted at the same time, and they did well for a while and even started getting flowers. But then as soon as I moved them outside to see if they do get, no, even in the summer, they didn't like it. They don't like our climate. So it's inside or permanently in a greenhouse. So I would say the same thing for a coffee plant. But at any rate, let's see what else. I've already gone 40 minutes, so over 40 minutes. Somebody was also asking for ideas for a way that they could build some kind of platform for their potted plants. And I think it was on the ground, not on a deck or something. And the thought that occurred to me just because is something that Patrick just did for me was, if you have access to like logs or wooden rounds that you could get for free or cheap, like we can pretty much here, those are great for so many things. A lot of people around here will just cut rounds and use them to make seats around a fire pit, or use a couple of those and lay a plank across there, and then you got a bench seat and around your fire pit. So anyway, off my front deck out here, my front garden area, it's kind of a hassle this time of the year to get into it because I have to go around the back through the fence, and then I've got another fence to keep the chickens out of the main garden area this time of year. I got another fence stretched across there, and then I got to unhook that and go through there. It's a real pain when it's so easy just to walk out my deck and go straight down into it. But what I was having to do was step over. We've got the fencing that goes all the way around, even in front of the deck, so the chickens, when they're running loose in there, don't go under the deck, because I don't want them going under there. So I've got a fence there. So I have to step from the deck over the fence down into the garden, and it's a big step. And And like one of these days, in fact, the other day, something like that happened to me. I got my foot hung up in the fence and I was kind of hanging upside down going, man, I hope my neighbors can't see me. It was so embarrassing. So I asked Patrick, I said, do you have any wood rounds where you could make me a step, something I could step onto straight from the deck over that fence? Because when you're on the deck, the fence from the deck, from the deck itself to the top of the fence is only like that. But then it's going down into the garden area. So he ended up cutting me two, which is perfect. So he made it actually like steps. So I just got to step over this little short part of the fence. I grab onto the juniper and I step onto the bigger, taller round, and they're about that big around. So it's real sturdy. And then down onto the shorter one he cut for me. It works great. So and I love the look of it. It's a very natural, kind of rustic look. And it was easy. He didn't have to build them from scratch. He just had to use his chainsaw and cut a couple pieces. It was easy. So there's some ideas for you. Don't underestimate the power of wood rounds if you have access to them. And I'll try to get a picture to post of those eventually here. I got to do some more cleanup out there because I was out pruning that juniper up. So I got chunks of juniper all over the place. I got to clean up still. And then a couple other things I wanted to say was somebody sent me an email. I get this every so often, and it's another one of those YouTube frustrations. But people think it's something I can fix, and unfortunately I can't. I don't know if it's only my videos that get affected by this, and I have no idea how many of my videos are like this, but I do know there's at least a few of the videos that I've put up for over 8 years that for some reason, so for you people who like having the subtitles, only have Korean subtitles with no way to change it to any other language at all. And when I was first informed of this years ago on one of my videos, I'm like looking at it and I'm going in there. I'm like, I've not ever made any changes. It's always been the same, where anybody should be able to set the subtitles to the language they want. But for some reason, I have a few videos out there that YouTube has disabled any other option but Korean. So unless you can read Korean, I don't know what to tell you. I have tried. So it's not me that did it. It's a weird YouTube glitch. And like I said, I haven't heard any other channel mention it. So I don't know if it's just some of my videos that for some reason YouTube has decided that it needed to have only Korean subtitles. I have no idea. Sorry, I'm reading. For those who are watching the replay, I'm reading some of the chat here. That reminds me, I've been busy asking my husband to make me a round wooden holder for my glass oil lamp. Cracker Barrel store used to sell them years ago. You know what's funny, Tammy, is I saw somewhere where you could buy, it was so crazy. It was online somewhere that I stumbled across. I don't know if it's a post somebody made, but they were just chunks of log. And they were selling them for like $300 a pop. And they were end tables. And they were nothing but a chunk of log. Maybe they had debarked it and it was smooth on the outside. Maybe. But it's like, man, if people are really paying that kind of money, we could just be raking in the dough. We could start selling these things. And also, we could charge $500 for the step that he made for the steps. Well, since there's 2 steps, maybe 700. A couple hundred for the short one, 500 for the much taller one. I don't know. Whatever. Crazy. But then again, maybe not everybody has access to wood that way, which I can understand, but I still wouldn't pay $300 for a chunk of wood that my husband could go out and cut. If I was going to pay $300 for an end table, it better have all the bells and whistles. It better have a cabinet in there where I could store stuff. electricity hooked up to it. It better also produce something like money or fruit. Anyway, which by the way, the coffee plant, when I repotted it, I finally got rid of something I've had for years and years, a Christmas cactus. I used to have it in this room in a window when it was small. We have little narrow windows in this room because it's my dance studio. So I've got mirrors on the wall, and in between each mirror, we designed it this way. We've got these little narrow windows that are only this wide, and I used to be able to set that Christmas cactus there, and it loved it, but it got too big for that, and I had to keep putting it big, and then I never could find a good spot for it, so I put it in the living room. It was doing okay in there for a while, but I'm looking at this thing the other day, and I'm going, this thing, it's not really happy anymore, and I feel like I'm constantly babying it, and all it's doing is making a mess, and it's not producing anything for me. It's not giving me anything I can eat, and it's not making me happy. So I said, that's it. I've had this plant for way too many years. It's just taking up space. I need this pot, and I don't feel like buying another pot. So I dumped the Christmas cactus and replaced it with the coffee plant, because some point that coffee plant's going to be given back to me if I don't kill it first. So sometimes, when you're trying to make the most of your space, you got to get rid of stuff that's just taking up space. Like I have a bunch of aloe vera plants in pots that size, but they give me something, right? They give back. They don't just look cool. They don't just clean the air. They give back in the form of aloe vera. So all the Q&A I wanted to go over there. So I do have a secondary topic. If I don't get booted, if I get booted, I do have a backup stream. As you know, I always try to have at least one backup stream. Well, not at least. I always have a backup stream ready to go. But I'm going to go ahead and start on that topic now. And I had a couple names for it. I touched on this last week. It wasn't a standalone topic, but it was, or maybe it was Wednesday. It was one of the points of something I was talking about. Whatever it was now, my mind just went blank. But basically it's about the importance of passing on what we know, what we've learned, and or paying it forward is another way to look at it. So when we look at what's been happening in public school systems for years, and is getting progressively worse. I don't know if some of you have heard about some of the even more changes, even more dumbing down they're going to be doing in the public school system, where they're lowering the percentage a student needs to pass. And I don't remember what states, but I'm sure it's going to be something that's going to, like our state, I'm sure would be one of the first ones to jump on board with this, Washington State. But what I heard, I just heard that, so I don't know how, just understand, this is just word of mouth. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but I heard that they're going to lower the percentage to like, as long as you get 21%, you can pass. What? 20, what? So all the percentages are being lowered, like what the percentage is of any test or the overall score you get in a class in order to get an A, a B, and simply just to pass. And they're not even going to force the students or require, let me put it this way, I'm talking high school, require the students to make it to class. Yeah, 21% is an F. I think I remember anything below 50% was an F, but now they've lowered that even farther. So it's really a shame. It's really a shame. So you're going to see even more and more incompetent people. They might have the brains to do this stuff, but they're not going to have they're not going to know anything. And they're going to need to be taught. So I've seen it happen over and over again, even just here. Just things getting, kids graduating with honors and then going off to just a basic community college just to get their what do you call it? Like your AA credits out of the way at a cheaper college before you go on to a university. And I know this girl, she's a smart girl. She worked hard. She graduated with honors. And then when she went off to the community college, found she ended up having to take a class that because she didn't score high enough. I can't remember what subject it was, but she had to go back to taking the before, what is it, like a 99 because she wasn't ready for the 101. So now she's got to pay the college fee for this class when it should have been covered in high school, and she graduated with honors. She was very, very mad about that. So what I've seen, just, as one who was teaching dance, one who was teaching martial arts, I taught dance here in this town for 28 years. Martial arts I taught for like 10, I think. And what I saw through my whole entire career of teaching, the difference in the kids I had when I first started teaching, and then that same age group 20, 28 years later, massive difference. I had to keep dumbing things down just in order for these kids to be able to grasp stuff. I had to explain things in a way, and I know some of you have heard me share some of this before, that I never had to do. And I'm talking kids that were 3, 4, 5, 6 years old could pick up on stuff just like that when I first started teaching back in 1988. When I first started teaching here, or 89, excuse me. And I could not believe the difference. But it's not because kids are getting dumber necessarily. It's because they're not being taught. They're not being taught just basic things, and they're not being taught how to think outside the box. And so this is why I think I have a lot of people that will come into my videos, and I'll be talking about making a half gallon of vinegar, and you use X amount of sugar to this much. And so they don't know the basics on, well, then how much sugar do I add if it's only a quart? How much sugar do I add if it's a gallon? And I was really kind of blown away because I'm like, wait, so I'm realizing how many people, and it's not because they're stupid, it's because they haven't been taught. How many people did not even understand the basics that and I'm one that was terrible in math. I should have flunked algebra 2. I did okay in algebra 1, but I should have failed algebra 2. My teacher gave me a D- just so I wouldn't have to take it again. But he first asked me, are you going to continue on and taking any other math classes, any more advanced classes? I said, no. He goes, okay, in that case, I'm going to give you a D- so you don't have to take this class again. And I'm like, thank you so much. So that's me, right? But I still graduated high school understanding that there are 4 quarts in a gallon. I graduated high school understanding that there are 2 half gallons in a whole gallon, that there are 2 quarts in a half gallon. So that 1 quart is half of a half gallon, which means I would half that amount that I'm putting in there. I understood my basic fractions. I understood what I needed to understand to be able to create my own recipes in my kitchen, to be able to start crocheting and understanding the math that's involved in that. So, and I'm not a mathematician. So I'm thinking if there's people now, and then several years ago, when my son, who was homeschooled, was able to tell the guy that worked in the hardware store how many centimeters were in an inch, and he was kind of blown away. Then he was asking me, how's your son know that? I said, because we homeschool? I don't know. And he's like, doesn't every kid know that? I don't know, because I didn't remember the metric system at all. So I had to rely on him too. Well, he was surprised at that because what really got him was how many adults, even adults that sewed, did not know how many feet were in a yard, how many quarts were in a gallon. So when he made the application for his store, for working in the hardware store, he had basic math problems that people needed to know the answer to before he would hire them. And that would be the stuff that most of us would know, like how many quarts are in a gallon, how many quarters are in a dollar, things like that. Especially when it came to measurements and weights because of the type of job that they worked. And so, except for metric, because you just don't really use a metric system much here. So a lot of that was, this guy, they were trying to figure it out because he had to do some kind of conversion there for something he was working on. So the point that I'm trying to make is that as we are learning from each other, okay, as I shared recently, that part of what I'm doing now when I share some of the stuff I've learned or the stuff that I've come up with on my own, this is all me learning from other people and me taking what I've learned or what I've created and then passing it on to others so that they can learn. And hopefully those people will take what they've learned from me and then the things that they've created or come up with on their own and pass it on to other people. But we especially need to be able to do this with the young people in our lives. So our children, our grandchildren. So even if you are going to be one of those that's going to take a chance and send your kids to public school, you're going to have to still homeschool them. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. They think, oh, I'll send I don't have time. I'm not smart enough to homeschool. I don't have time to homeschool. Well, let me tell you something. The kids coming home with hours, I'm talking grade school kids. I'm not even talking high schoolers. Coming home from school and still having several hours worth of homework to do, they're homeschooling, right? They're already homeschooling. You could do homeschooling in that same amount of time and just cut out the middleman. I mean, we usually had most of our work done in 2 to 3 hours, sometimes 1, depending on the day, depending on the topics, or depending on the age. But it's sometimes longer, it just depended like some of the math stuff could be really frustrating. And my boys were like, okay, I didn't understand this. I'm going to go all the way back here and I'm going to start over because I got lost somewhere along the way. And so, yeah, that made some things take longer. But you know what? They came out in the end understanding what they were doing. And I didn't have to do that much work. Once a child can learn that they have the ability, first of all, they got to learn how to read and have reading comprehension. Once they have that, they can be self-taught. And there's very little that the parent has to do other than checking the work and making sure they're getting their work done. And so it's actually far easier than most people realize who've never homeschooled. So I kind of look at it at this point, if they're learning absolutely nothing in school except for whatever the latest political fad is that you may or may not agree with, which just shouldn't be up to the school to teach, a political opinion or, some kind of protesting thing to get on board with that's pushed by the school districts. If that's all they're coming out of school knowing, then there's no point in sending them because they're not getting the basic skills they need to survive. And so this is why, if your kids are grown, obviously homeschool something in the past. And I do honestly believe with my whole heart that a single parent that has to work outside the home can still homeschool their kids. Your biggest issue is finding someone to take care of them while you're at work. That's going to be the toughest part. The homeschooling part, you can do that when you get home from work. Because remember, if you send them to public school, you're still going to have to help them with their homework. When you're homeschooling, you know exactly what they're learning. So, and you don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to, you know, yeah, you don't have to be an Einstein. Well, and let's remember, wasn't Einstein, was it Einstein? Yeah, I think it was Einstein that he was brilliant, but he didn't have great language art skills, right? He was, he wasn't a good speller. So the trade school thing, thank you, Deb. That was going to be my next point. So we talking about the importance of trade school, because college anymore, unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and even then I'm not sure. Like there's got to be a way around just at least the basic college stuff. Um, for the most part, I've seen college for some time now as a scam. For the most part, not in all cases. But trade schools, I think every kid that when they're done with their basic schooling, be it homeschool, public school, whatever, that trade school should be what they're going directly into. Because you can learn a trade, it's going to cost a lot less money, and you can actually have a skill that you can fall back on if you really want to go into gender studies, because you can go and pay $200,000 for a college degree or university to get for gender studies to do what? To earn what kind of income? And then have, this debt hanging over you that you may never be able to pay off. So, and I think I've mentioned this before, that it used to be that was just the way things were done. People would learn. I don't know that there was necessarily trade schools, but you learned as an apprentice under another person. If you wanted to be a blacksmith, if you wanted to do this, if you wanted to do that, you learned by working under that person, working right alongside them and learning the job as you did the job. And this is what our country is sorely missing. China too. We've been watching a lot of there's been a couple of China, one's called China Observer. I can't remember what the other one's called. But anyway, really interesting stuff we've been learning about China and just what's happening over there. I mean, they're getting hit hard on all sides. And I feel bad for the people. I really feel bad for the people, but I also think, man, that we're heading down this same path. And they're in the same boat. They don't have enough skilled trade workers, blue collar workers. And so this is some of the issues they're having there. You think they did, because they got a lot of people doing the, making the iPhones and whatnot. But yeah, it's not as many as you think. It's really kind of surprising. They're just not, a lot of them don't have the basic skills, and that's what we're seeing here. So the importance of, it doesn't matter if you're a homesteader or not. It doesn't matter if you have farm animals or not, but we should all have basic skills, because you got kids coming out of school that don't even graduated from high school that have no idea how to do their laundry. I know people like that. I've seen quite a number of people like that. Don't know how to do their laundry, have no idea how to even open some kind of packaged meal, be it top ramen, macaroni and cheese, or something like that. Something easy where you basically just add water and cook it. Don't even know how to do that. Don't even know how to do something from a box or a package, even with the directions right on there. Don't even know how to turn on an oven or a washing machine. Well, of course, today's washing machines, I can understand that. It's like, how many doggone buttons are on these things, and what does it mean? What does it all mean? I remember it used to just be a dial. That was it. It was easy. Some of that I think I could understand. But really, I mean, seriously, I know people like this. Graduate from high school and have absolutely no skills. They don't even know the basics enough to care of themselves once they move out, just to take care of their own doggone selves. How to clean their house, how to clean a toilet, how to make the bed. I mean, so obviously some of this is problems at home too, not being taught at home. And this, well, and really what it boils down to, I think that's what mostly people are missing, is the parents are either too busy or too caught up in other things that they're not taking the time to teach the kids the important skills they need to know. They're expecting either somebody else to do it or that maybe they're going to pick it up by osmosis. I don't know. But it's just not being taught. I can remember this is years ago too. There was a mom that came in and her girls were like middle school, high school age. Oh, she had a son about the age, so she had 3 kids. And she needed to stop by middle of the day so she could pay me for class. And as she's standing there talking to me, and she goes, "Oh, it's just been such a busy day. Oh no, she called me and she says, I'm going to be there in about 10 minutes to come drop by and pay you. I still have one more bed to make." One more bed? One more bed to make? And I'm thinking, all her kids are old enough to make their own doggone beds. Our kids were making their own beds as soon as they were old enough to start being able to pull the covers up. Did they make it really well? Military, neat and clean? No, but they were taught. This was a habit, right? So here was this mom, and this was years and years ago, who was making her kids' beds for them every day. They'd go to school, and when I think about it, they were nice kids, but I remember the one girl, the oldest one, came into class one day and she opened up a piece of candy. There was a garbage can. She was middle school at the time, sitting right just about 3 feet from her. And she opened up this candy because class hadn't started yet. We're still, still had several minutes. And she threw the wrapper in the middle of the dance room floor. And I said, "Excuse me?" And she goes, "Oh, I didn't know where the garbage was." I'm like, "It's right there." I said, "You expect me to pick up after you? That's not going to happen." And she apologized and picked it up and threw it in the garbage. But see, the thing is, this was clearly a habit of hers. And I kind of got on a rabbit trail, but my point being that kids are not being taught at home, generally speaking. Okay. Obviously, I don't want to paint every parent in a bad light. They're not being taught the basic skills in school like a lot of people think they are. Same thing goes with church. You send your kids to VBS, you send your kids to Sunday school and assume that they're learning the Bible, but they're probably not. They're going to do, there is not that it's bad to send them to Sunday school, VBS, and all this, Vacation Bible School. But if you really want them to learn the Bible, that needs to be something that's done as a family at home. That's where the best learning is going to happen. And then as adults, to other adults, adults to adults, we need to be able to be generous enough to share what we've learned with others. That can be in the form of starting a YouTube channel or not. It doesn't have to. It can be in the form of sharing the recipes you've created, writing them out and sharing them on Facebook. That's what I used to do, was share information on Facebook. But my problem was the recipe thing. What's your recipe, please? And I'm like, it's here. I don't know. It's here. I just put stuff in there and did this with it. That's why I started YouTube, so I could show people what I do. And because the people wanted to learn. So at any rate, yeah, and I would share things I'd learned about different herbs and stuff, and I'd type this stuff up. I'd type all this stuff up and put that in posts because I knew somebody. I didn't get paid for that. I just put it out there, sharing that information because somebody, hopefully, there's just one person out there that can get something from it. So this is why I say paying it forward, is because I've learned a lot of stuff from other people that I didn't pay for. read blogs and watched videos and working alongside friends and other people, and I learned things that way and I didn't have to pay for it. And so and again, this is why, it is really helpful when I can make money off of YouTube, because there's a lot of time that goes into it. But when I first started my channel, it was a while before I monetized, and I was still happy to get the information out there, hoping I could help other people. And that's why I want to keep doing this. I love the fact that I can make revenue, even if it's not as much as it once used to be, for the hard work I put in here. But what I really love about it is that nobody has to pay a dime for it. It's there at the touch of a button. And we need to try to make that effort as much as we can, even as we're learning. This is one of the reasons I don't want to write a book, because I'm always learning something new and changing the way I do things, or finding better ways to do things. And sometimes it's either something I thought of new, or it's because of stuff you people out there have shared with me. And I'm like, I love that idea. Or, oh, I didn't know that. Now I learned something new. Like the lady that shared with me that calendula leaves were edible when I thought they were toxic, because I read that somewhere. And it's not even true. In fact, I just ate a calendula leaf the other day and I'm like, wow, this tastes better than I remember it. And it's something you can add to a salad. So that's what I mean. I'm always learning. I don't want to write this stuff down thinking I'm right and then find out, oh, I'm wrong. Now I got to go edit my book and republish it again and make everybody buy it again. I mean, I don't want to put in the work in the first place into a book. My life is too full as it is. But I know I would have to edit it like 15,000 times. Could I make a lot of money off of it doing that way? Maybe, I don't know. People would get tired of buying my books. Here's, edition number 52 with even more corrections. My boys can cook and my daughters know basic car maintenance. That's the way it should be. My oldest son never got, he could cook some basic stuff, but he never was wanting to get serious about learning how to cook, which is fine. He would pick up all kinds of other skills. He can sew, he can crochet, where Justin didn't care about that stuff, but Justin wanted to learn how to cook for himself, and he still does. So, he was 6 years old when I finally said, okay, I'm getting tired of cooking you eggs all day long. Mom, can you make me some more eggs? I mean, I can't want to eat eggs all day. So I said, okay, that's it. Pull in the stool, set it in front of the stove. I'm going to teach you how to cook an egg. 6 years old. And from that day forward, he cooked his own eggs, and he learned how to make all kinds of eggs, not just scrambled eggs, all of the eggs, all of them, even poached, which I had never done before. But he just wanted to learn how to do them all. And creates his own recipes, whatever sounds good to him. So, yeah, I mean, it's important that we pass this knowledge on to our kids. We pass this stuff on to our grandkids. When the grandkids are here, the boys, Patrick, well, and Rowan too, Patrick's always doing something, and the kids are right in there learning. And Jace, both of them, both the grandsons, all three of them love to help. They're all different ages. So what they can and they do is going to be a little bit different. And sometimes it's not all that helpful, but how are they going to learn if we don't have the patience and the time to work with them? Jason in particular always kind of surprises me, because he still isn't really talking yet. Every now and then a word will come out, but he's 3 years old. He really isn't talking, but he understands you and he watches you. He knows if you're getting ready to go outside to go work in the garden or something, he'll run over there and open the door for you. Or, if he knows that Papa's going to go somewhere, he's putting on his boots and he's going to go with Papa. I mean, and he loves to help. He loves to help do stuff. If he knows something needs to be thrown away, he knows where the garbage is. He'll pick it up and go throw it away. just all this kind of stuff. If I'm hanging the laundry up, he'll be pulling clothes out of my laundry basket to hand to me so I can hang it up on the line. And Jack said the same thing. So I know one of my mistakes as a parent, I made a lot of mistakes, was not that I didn't teach my kids, because obviously I did. I homeschooled them, but there were so much more I could have taught them. I didn't have the patience to do because it took too much time. I mean, yeah, they were taught how to clean the bathroom, scrub the toilets. They had to each scrub a toilet at least once a week. And then I would clean it the other days. But that was one of their responsibilities, besides keeping their room clean, making their beds, washing the dishes. They had set responsibilities they had to do, because not only should they be productive members of the household, they need to have these skills once they get out there, because there's no guarantee their wives are going to have that skill, and they might have to teach her too. So, and same thing goes with your daughter. I mean, did you pay them an allowance? Not exactly. Because how it worked was, there were certain chores that they should just do and not expect money for. It'd be like, I don't get paid to do your laundry for you. Nobody pays me for that. But on the other hand, they would get a certain amount of allowance, because I wanted them to have cash that they could also earn to learn how to save and price compare, cost compare things. So that would be like maybe the extra stuff. Okay, this money you're getting for doing these extra things each week. But you're not getting, I made it clear to them, you're not getting paid this to make your bed and keep your room clean and so on and so forth. So it was like, yes, but it didn't cover everything, because I did think it was important for them to try until they were able to start going out and earning money, raking leaves for somebody and things like that, for them to start learning right away how to manage their money. That's the phrase I'm looking for. Calendula leaves are edible. Yes. So yeah, it was a surprise to me, because when I looked it up quite a number of years ago, I was like, okay, so the leaves are toxic. Okay, I wondered. I knew you could eat the flowers. I wasn't sure about the leaves, but I only looked at one. This is one of the reasons why I learned how to go to many different sites and find the one that was most common. Okay, people actually using the leaves and doing this and that. And it was because a subscriber told me, oh, no, the leaves are edible, because I had said they were toxic, I think, in my original calendula video. Maybe I only did one. Maybe that's a video I need to redo again. Benefits of calendula. So yeah. So I'm like, when she told me that, she said she ate them all. She ate them. She used them in salads. And so I went out there and tried one. And I'm like, oh, I'm not dead. I'm not sick. Kind of have a little bit of a spicy flavor to them. Not bitter. But the one I ate, was it today? It was yesterday I ate one. That one tasted really good. It tasted better than the one I tried a few years ago. Oh, I don't know if there's a max you can eat. Probably not. I would assume it wouldn't be any different than eating a dandelion leaf. I don't keep track of how many I eat of those. So, I mean, it'd be something to look up. But at any rate, that's one of those things that it's like, this is why we need each other. And we need to keep teaching each other and dropping, like, how is it that I usually try to say it? Living by example for those people that might not think they're interested in learning. This is why I started sharing. I often still, and I still do on my personal Facebook page, I share pictures of stuff, like the picture I shared on my YouTube channel in the post section. I share that on YouTube. Or excuse me, I share that on my personal Facebook page so my friends and family can see that, hoping to kind of get them thinking. And it does help. There are some people that start asking questions. They want to know about this. Maybe it will be months, maybe it will be years. And then they'll reach out and say, I have a question about something. And then you realize somewhere along the way, a fire got ignited. It took a while. Might have just been a little coal burning in there for years. And now there's a real desire to want to learn. And so it's really cool when that happens. And you never know who that person's going to be. It might not be the person you expect. Might be the last person you expect. So what was that? My sister didn't really learn to cook until she was 55, and she probably wouldn't have. What was that? He just hasn't found anything he wants to say yet. Are you talking about my grandson, Jace? Yeah, he's funny because every so often he'll say Papa, and there's every now and then he's tried to. Grandma's always harder to say than Papa. He's come really close to saying it, and he'll do that for a little while, and then he'll stop. He'll just stop saying it, whatever it is. And I don't know if it's because you say Grandma, say Papa, for demanding it out of him. Then it's like, I'm not going to do it because you're telling me to. Because that would be me. But then every so often one thing he does say almost every time though, I'll say, you're so cute. And he goes, yeah. Almost every time. In fact, one day he was in here because we got the pool table over there, and he likes to go over the pool table and roll them billiards around. And I was in the other room, and I think I was talking to Rowan, and I'm like, you're so cute. I said, he's in here, and he hears me, and I hear him from in there, and he goes, yeah. I love it when he does that. It makes me laugh every single time. And then one day, he only did this that one day, but one day I said, you're so cute. And he goes, yeah. And then Patrick's like, thank you. Cause he'll do that too. And I said to Jace, I said, is Papa cute? And he goes, no. And I'm like, wait, we both looked at each other. It's like, never heard him say no before. So I said, are you cute? And he goes, yeah. Is Papa cute? No. Oh my goodness. It was so adorable. So he knows. He says words when he really wants to. But he'll get it. He's definitely smart enough. He just and we took him for the first time since we were watching him yesterday. We took him to our fellowship. I've been kind of wanting to bring him when I watch him one Saturday every month, and because his parents Marlene only works like one Saturday every month, and then Justin always works on Saturday. So I'm like, okay, we'll go ahead and give it a try. I just wasn't sure because he's kind of shy initially. He walked in there. He was all excited to go. And we took the Bug. It was the first time we actually made any kind of trip in the Bug, the one that Patrick got from his dad. So we drove that out there, and he was all excited. We got in there. He kicked off his boots. He'd never been to these people's house before. And he's just wandering around looking at everything. I'm like, I thought he was going to be super shy. And then he sat on the couch with one of the couches with us, and he was actually pretty good. Mostly he started getting pretty antsy towards the end though, because it was one of those times where there was a lot of people just talking and it got kind of long in the tooth. And even then he behaved pretty well, but he was like, kept trying to get off the couch. But I was amazed. We both were. He did really well. So we're going to start doing that, every time, just taking him with us, because then at least he's also getting that. And he's learning, he's learning how to sit and be patient. And yeah, kids are way smarter than we know. Being quiet is a good sign sometimes. Yep. I can see him a lot of times. You'll be talking about stuff, and then you'll see him just sitting there studying you. And I'm like, How much of what I'm saying does he understand? I should probably be careful what I'm saying. Sometimes we kind of assume that when a kid doesn't talk that they're not understanding everything you're saying, but the way he'll watch me sometimes, like he's really interested in what I'm saying. I'm like, I think he understands everything I'm saying. You gotta watch out for those quiet ones. I wonder the same about my cats, right? I don't have a cat. I had a cat when I was a young girl. From the time I was 5 until I was 20. So I had her for 15 years. She was my best friend. But yeah, so I get it. Dogs, I don't know. Well, dogs do understand. It's like if it's sunny out on the deck, I mean, they understand a lot. People say, why do you talk to your dog? Because they understand a lot. So if it's sunny out on the deck and Cody's in there in his bed, and I'll lay a blanket or something out on the deck for him. They love it when I do that because Luna's here right now too. And so Luna was already laying out in the sun, and I'm like, no, Cody's not out in the sun. He loves laying in the sun. So I said, Cody, sun's out. He'll go running outside. He knows. He knows what that means. Oh, I get to go lay in the sun. Or even the chickens. I just got to walk outside and go, chicken birds, and they all come running over. Or take the little scratch cup, I put it in a little cup and shake it, and they come running. See, they know. If a chicken can get something, a kid can certainly get something. See, my first grandson walked at 8 months, but didn't talk until almost 3 years. But when he did, he knew all the words. See, that's what I keep thinking Jace is going to do. Just one of these days, he's going to all of a sudden surprise us and just start speaking full paragraphs. And we'll be like, oh. So I don't want to see if there was something else I was going to say. I didn't take that much notes on the importance of passing on what we have learned. But yeah, I did write down trade schools and the importance of that. But even outside of trade schools, I mean, there's so much that we can teach each other, and we can teach our grandchildren, and we can teach our children just from home. And it's a lot of that really basic and just the common sense. When kids can learn just basic common sense, they're already going to be a step ahead of most kids their age in the way things are going, because those things are just not taught anymore either. Like I said, even balancing your finances. This is why I think it's important. I mean, each parent's got to decide what they need to do when it comes to an allowance per se. I think kids need to earn it, but I also think it's good for them to learn at a young age how to manage their money. I think this is really important, and it's not that, again, is not something that's taught. Sometimes kids are just given money and they can go spend it on whatever, and it's like, okay, well, now that your money's gone, that's all you get until whenever, or until you do this job or this chore. Question: I have plantains growing in my yard suddenly this year. I assume you have a video. I do. I have a video on my main channel on plantain and its benefits. But apart from salves and wound healing, can you suggest anything else to do with it? Now, plantain is edible. You can make teas from it. I don't really prefer eating it unless you get really, really young leaves, because they got this really tough, stringy stuff in the middle. But you can use them in salads. I used to, when I first started making the greens blend, I used to put plantain in there. Now I don't anymore, because I always got to pull those really tough, stringy parts out. It's not that they're not edible, they're just not pleasant. It's like the stringy parts on celery or rhubarb or something can get a little annoying. So, but yeah, you can dehydrate them up and then crumble them and pull the stringy parts out or sift them out, and then add that to a greens blend, because they are edible. They're really, really good for you. But yeah, I mean, I mostly use them for medicinal purposes. So I do keep plantain and comfrey are a couple of the herbs, along with some other flowers, that go into my daily skin cream. I use it on my face a couple times a day. I use it as a lip balm as well. Sometimes I even put it in my hair. Um, and then also you can make a stronger, like a salve, like I said, but it doesn't have to be just plantain. But this gets me onto another thing I've mentioned in a more recent live or something I did. I don't remember when, but I know it was pretty recent, where I was talking about how when it comes to gardening, growing stuff, I was just talking about calendula, right? I love calendula and I would like to keep growing it every year, but to me it's more troublesome, um that if I had to not worry about the calendula, I don't need to anymore. And here's why. Because, well, calendula typically is an annual unless you can grow it in a place that stays pretty protected in the winter and you don't get, I don't know what zone it would be, but you don't get a lot of real freezing winters. Like I can sometimes grow it up against a house and it will come back the next year. It usually doesn't come back a second year. When it does it, I can get a lot more flowers off it and it's great, but it doesn't happen very often. Whereas dandelion, I don't have to work for it. I don't have to start it from seed every year. And dandelion has so many benefits. All parts of the plant are edible. All parts of the plant have medicinal purposes. The flowers, I would say, are probably just as good for your skin as the calendula flowers are. They're very closely related. Then I have plantain, which is wild and grows everywhere. I have self heal. I have comfrey, lots and lots of comfrey. Honeysuckle. My honeysuckle vines just keep, or plants, they just keep getting bigger and producing more flowers every year. And they're perennial. I don't have to worry about it. I don't really have to do anything with them other than like, okay, I need to cut this back or maybe wind it around this over here so it's not sticking out in the pathway. So like I said, I've got honeysuckle in there right now, honeysuckle flowers. What else is really great for skin that is something most people, that just is a perennial that just keeps coming back? Oh, there's lots of things, but oh, my brain just is not thinking of it. But anyway, there's all kinds of stuff that can grow wild that you can use for the same purpose. And you don't have to grow calendula if it's too much of a pain to have to keep starting it from seed every year. I mean, because there might be some years like I don't even want to mess with annual herbs this year. Well, I'll always mess with I'll always be planting potatoes and tomatoes and peppers, but well, as long as I'm still able to do it, but I may not always worry about calendula when I have so many other. Oh, camellia flowers. That's another one. I don't have to do anything with that other than prune the shrub back every so often. Then I get those flowers, collect the flowers. It's like my rose. I'm going to pull my rose out. Um, One of these days, I'd like to get a wild rose, like the original rose, not some kind of hybrid, but I want to pull my roses out because they're more work than other types of plants than like the camellia. Or I'm going to get the same kind of benefits out of the flowers. I can pull that rose out and plant something else in there and not have to worry about dealing with the fungus that rose keeps wanting to develop. The roses, uh, things like that. So sometimes, these are things that I think about every year when I'm gardening. It's like, okay, I wonder if I should just pull this out because now I've got this over here growing that showed up in my garden. Oh, yarrow. There's another really good skin benefiting, healing herb. And it's perennial. So I don't need my roses. I don't need to keep growing calendula. I'll probably keep growing calendula at least for a while because I do like growing it, but I'm kind of fed up with the roses and dealing with them. And it's just taking up some valuable space that I could be using for something better. It's something that doesn't require so much work. Well, that's the thing is I don't work on it. I don't fuss with it. Oh, going back to the aphids though. So neem oil. Neem oil is good, or is good for killing just about any kind of insect. You just have to be careful how you use it, because obviously you don't want to kill your beneficial insects. But that could be something you can spray on plants too to help with the aphids and the ants. But is also good for helping with fungus on your roses. I just never remember to go out there and keep up on it. That's my problem. So, and I don't want to have to worry about that. I got enough other things on my plate. I don't want plants that I have to babysit all the time. So that's kind of where I'm at. The other thing is I really wanted this gooseberry. I keep forgetting the name of it. It's not the green gooseberry. It's a smaller berry and it's dark red. It's got like a Japanese sounding name. Starts with an H. Oh, it's so tasty. It is so tasty. But there is the sawfly larva devours it every year. And I'm kind of fed up with it, because I get lots of currants. I get lots of blackberries. I'm going to get a ton of raspberries this year. I really don't need that particular berry plant when it's nothing more than just basically a thorn in my side. And speaking of a thorn in my side, it has thorns on it and it will grab you and it hurts. My currants don't do that to me. Well, the blackberries do, but my point is, when it comes to what you plant, it's not even just about your climate and what can grow in your area. It's like, do you really want to worry about a plant that's not going to come back on its own every year? Or even if it's an annual like borage, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to plant it every year. It's an annual, but it'll come right back every year. In fact, I think I shared this with you guys recently, that I was a little concerned about whether or not I was going to get any borage this year, because the chickens absolutely love the borage. And so as soon as it comes up out of the ground, they'll eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it. If the plant is full grown, throw them the whole plant and they'll eat it. In fact, I just started feeding the chicks fresh borage leaves. They love them. They found out immediately, we love these. So I was worried that since I didn't do anything with the garden last year and let the chickens roam through it in it all last year, so they'd be eating all the borage that was coming up on its own. And then through the early part of this year, if any borage was going to try to come up, they'd be eating it until I blocked them off from that area. So I'm like, it's hard to see how many borage plants or if any, I'll have coming up this year. No need to worry. There's borage plants coming up all over out there, and I am thrilled. I love borage. I love that it's good for the bees. The bees love it. It draws them in. The whole plant is edible. It tastes like cucumber. The leaves can be a little spiky, but I can chop and drop to feed the soil. I can throw the plants out to feed the chickens. And I love using the flowers in salad. Or you can, I've used the borage in my mixed greens before, and in soap making, because it has skin benefiting properties too. And yes, I have a video on the benefits of borage as well. So that's something, even though it's an annual, I don't have to worry about it. It just keeps coming back every year. And I can see the arnica. I'm really thrilled. I'm not going to have to worry about planting that every year either. And it's not an annual, it's a perennial, at least it's a biennial. No, it's a perennial. It flowers in the very first year. And this is what, the third or fourth year. And I just keep getting more plants out there, and I love it. So I don't have to worry about it. And those are the kind of plants that I'm trying to steer myself more towards, especially the older I get. I don't want to have so many different things to worry about. I want to be able to make my garden as easy to tend as I possibly can. And that's really important. I remember Doug and Stacy years ago talking about how the way they were doing things for their garden is, knowing that they're get older, they want to be able to just step outside their door and pick some apples. Even though I think they have 11 acres where we're at doing all this stuff is just a little just a lot, just a standard size neighborhood lot. And yet I can step out my front door. Pretty soon I'm going to have ripe strawberries on my front deck. Same thing on the back deck. I've got thyme and oregano right on my back deck. I can gather that up for whatever I'm making. Same thing, on the front, or I can step down on my new steps that Patrick made into the front yard garden and harvest some peppermint to make a fresh pot of tea. I can walk around just to the side yard and pick some apples. I love this. I love that everything is so close. And we do have our other pieces of property, obviously, but that's one thing, is that even if you just have a small lot, there's a lot you can do in a small area, and you can, in the nice thing is you're going to set it up. You don't have much choice but to have it close to you. Okay. So you don't, have to walk miles to get to whatever. It's just right there. And so the older we get, the more we think about this kind of stuff, and something that uh, we all need to think about, no matter how young you are. There's going to come a time where it's going to be harder and harder to go up and down certain steps, or climbing over fences, or climbing up and down ladders. So you got to think of, what are ways that I can still keep doing these things for myself, but make it so I can, and I don't have to quit. My neighbor across the street, I think she's in her 80s. If you saw her from a distance, you would think, well, from a distance, you might think she was in her 50s, even 60s at most. And she's very active. She's always out there working in her garden. She doesn't grow a whole lot of like edible stuff. She does some in her backyard, but she's always out there gardening. And I remember years ago when my kids were still at home, there's a couple times she was going to want maybe to hire the boys to do some work for her. She goes, I don't really do that much, because I like to do it myself, because it's the one way I can try to keep myself younger and in shape, is doing my own yard work as much as I'm able. And I thought that was really a good thing. So the more you're able to get out and do a lot of that stuff for yourself, the longer you're going to prolong your healthy lifestyle. Like, I don't care if I live another 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I don't care about how much longer I live. I care about wanting to be as healthy as I can all the way to the end, but also knowing that regardless, you're still getting older. There's still things that aren't going to work as well as they once used to. And we got to kind of be ready to work around that, or, do what we can. And like I said, I think last week, just like this whole passing on what we know, when we're able to teach others, then now we might have people that care enough about us that they can know where to step in and help when we need it. Not that we should do all that stuff for, out of selfishness, but that is something to think about. I would like to know that my boys can come over, and, maybe something happens to Patrick and I'm here by myself. It's like, hey, can you help me do this? Because I can't lift this 50-pound thing like I once used to be able to do. And I know they would. So I was in the hospital for 3 months last summer and came home to find my pantry had flower moths. I threw all packages and boxes away and washed shelves with vinegar, still seeing one or two at a time. What will get rid of them? You must live in a dry climate. I don't know that. It seems like I remember in Wenatchee we would get those. I don't know what my parents did, but I don't remember getting a lot of them. And I don't think we've ever had any here. At least not that I remember. So I probably am not the best person to ask. I don't know how damaging those are. I mean, you think about it, a lot of the grains you eat probably have weevils in them. I mean, that's weevils. That's not a flower moth. I know it's a different kind of bug, but don't know what to say for certain. So anyway, I think I've covered everything I was going to talk about, and good grief, I've been on here almost 2 hours, so I really should get going and not keep taking up even more of you people's times. time, whatever. I can't speak. And again, I just want to say, and I see Deb, she had to leave. So thanks, Deb. And thanks for everyone for coming in. And even if you're only here for a few minutes, you were able to listen to the whole thing. You were able to come back and watch it later. Thank you so much for your time and for listening to me ramble and be silly and make mistakes. And I hope that regardless of all my mistakes and all my fumbling and bumbling, that you guys learned something or were reminded of something that's important to cling to. And yeah. And thanks so much for just the fellowship and the back and forth. And I do honestly enjoy and need this time. It's been very helpful to me and my sanity in all the busyness of my days. So I truly appreciate it. Anyway, hope you all have a great rest of your week or a great week ahead and a great rest of your day. Thank you and God bless. Bye.